they don't belong. That's how we're gonna fight.
For those people, for that American nation that we all love, is to re-elect Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices.
Welcome back to America Decides, the election night program brought to you by the journalism students here at the University of Northampton and the students of the University of Richmond in the USA. I'm Dante Gray.
And I'm Janique Lovian. Will Donald Trump win back the White House, or will Kamala Harris stop him in his tracks? Stay with us as we take you through the night.
Trump is currently predicted to take an early lead in the race to become the next US president, with 23 electoral college votes compared to Kamala's 3. Trump currently is predicted to have 32 electoral college seats, whereas Kamala Harris is predicted to have months. Huge number of states have just finished voting.
Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware and Illinois have all closed their polls. But most importantly of all, voting has finished in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. It's the state that may well determine who wins the presidential prize.
Pennsylvania holds 19 votes in the Electoral College, the largest amount of any of the swing states. The battle there has been intense.
So what better time to pause and recap how the American presidential election actually works? In some ways, it's similar to our own, but in others, it's totally different. Here's how it all works. Today is the day American voters will go to the polls to pick their 47th president of the United States. But how does voting work? Is it simply decided by who gets the most votes? Definitely not. Let's talk about the Electoral College.
In the 1800s, the founding fathers of the United States wanted to establish a democratic system that had a balance between electing the president by a vote in Congress and a popular vote casted by the citizens, which is done through the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a body made up of a group of people with the main task of electing a candidate that reflects the wishes of their state. So, when people go to the polls, they'll be casting their votes to the Electoral College. Each state has a different number of electors based on the size of its population. California and Texas have 55 and 38 electoral votes due to their larger population, whereas Wyoming, Delaware and Alaska only have 3 electoral votes. In total, there are 538 electors. In order to win, the successful candidate will need to get a majority of these votes, which is at least 270. In many states, the candidate who wins a majority of public votes gets the full support of that state's electors. A main factor that parties would have to consider are swing states, which are also known as battleground states. Swing states are the states that could be won by either the Democratic or Republican Party. They can play a vital role in determining the outcome of the election, as they are unpredictable. In 2016, Hillary Clinton received more national votes, whereas Donald Trump secured more votes from the battleground states like Ohio and North Carolina. Trump was able to gain his victory in 2016 by getting enough electoral votes, which shows the decision of who becomes president isn't decided by a popularity contest. Current swing states are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and North Carolina. Because of the chance of these states swinging to either blue or red, candidates often spend a lot of time and effort into their campaigning to successfully win them over.
So now you know how the election works. All that's left is who will win this evening.
You're watching America Decides, brought to you by the University of Northampton, in partnership with the University of Richmond. Kamala Harris' running mate is Tim Walz. It's fair to say few had heard of him outside the USA, or even within it, until he burst onto the scene at the Democratic National Convention. Viewers warmed to the sight of Walz's neurodiverse teenage son in tears, cheering on his father. But who is Tim Walz, the teacher and high school football coach turned politician?
We're not going back.
For many people, they probably hadn't heard of Tim Walz prior to him joining presidential candidate Kamala Harris as her running mate. So who is Tim Walz and why did Harris choose him to join her bid for the White House? After his father served in the Korean War, Walz decided to enlist to the Army National Guard and Army Reserve.
2 days after my 17th birthday, and I proudly wore our nation's uniform for 24 years.
Losing Vice President candidate J.D. Vance accused Walz of stolen valour, as Walz was never deployed to a war zone. In fact, Walz retired before his unit was deployed to Iraq so he could continue his congressional campaign in 2005.
When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him.
His campaign became focused on his disapproval of the Iraq War, and he won the election with 53% of the vote. He was sworn into Congress in 2007, making him the highest-ranking retired enlisted soldier to ever serve in Congress. He was re-elected to Congress 5 times before becoming governor of Minnesota in 2019. One of Walz's priorities as governor was to better support schools, as he knew firsthand the difficulties of the education system.
I wound up teaching social studies and coaching football at Mankato West High School. Go Scarlets!
Once he became governor, he invested $2.3 billion into the state education system and ensured that all students had access to free breakfast and lunch at school. Walz also prioritised improving child literacy in the state and expanded the access to mental health support for students. Education isn't the only issue that is personal for Walz.
Access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business.
Walz and his wife Gwen dealt with infertility struggles and required IVF treatments to conceive their daughter Hope. His healthcare protections also extend beyond women's health. Walz established himself as an LGBT ally when he banned conversion therapy. He also fought to protect the rights of trans individuals.
Our trans neighbors, our children, are feeling the pressure. We see states that are using state power as an apparatus of cruelty, quite honestly.
Walz and Harris are both gun owners, but as governor, Walz put several gun restrictions in place.
First responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence.
We could see Walz's state policies be adapted to national policies if he and Harris take the White House.
The suspense is rising, but how long will it take us to get a result? Joining us here in the studios, our reporter Joe Dodge. So Joe, when are we likely to know who will win?
Well, Janique, how long is a piece of string? Because at the end of the day, we do not know how long it's going to take until it actually eventually happens. Because hopefully it will come tonight. Most likely it will come in a couple of days, and unlikely, but still a chance, that it will come in a couple of weeks. Because this is a very standard thing when it comes to very close elections. Now, I could be proven all wrong when it eventually comes through, but I think this election will be incredibly tight and incredibly close-knit, because of all of the controversy going on with Donald Trump and, of course, Biden dropping out of the election, leaving it to Kamala Harris. But with these very, very tight-knit elections, you see it all the time. Back in 2020, same thing happened. Back in 2000, same thing happened. These elections take ages to finally decide, because these close elections always have altercating circumstances that always bring some form of controversy or just slow the whole procedure down, really.
So what happens if it's close?
If it's close, in the 2020 election, we did see that after things started to get a bit close between the election of obviously Biden and Donald Trump, a lot of Republican voters became fairly aggressive, which caused quite a bit of violence, which caused a massive slowdown of the courts and caused many lawsuits, which slowed down the actual election to a very, very almost snail pace. And now is that going to happen again? Most likely not. Last time was a freak action and a freak accident. But if it does happen again, then it will probably be in a couple of weeks until we eventually find who the actual president of the United States is.
Thank you, Joe. One journalist from Northamptonshire has accidentally found herself in the firing line of the election. Kaylee Polachek studied multimedia journalism here at the University of Northampton, and she now works for the BBC. Tom Toland asked how she ended up in Washington.
There's lots of options and there's lots of potential outcomes. So it might be that I go out there and absolutely nothing happens. It's all really calm. I have a lovely holiday. I eat lots of hot dogs and come home, and that's the end of it. It could be that I go out there and the Kamala Harris wins and Donald Trump supporters get rowdy, which is potentially an option, and that there's unrest, and that it might be that BBC Radio Northampton want to speak to me as a Northampton resident out there at the time and talk about what that's like, if I've seen anything, what I've heard, what the atmosphere's like. It might be that BBC Look East would like to speak to me because they haven't got any other options, and I'm a BBC staff member out there. It might be that I end up doing a two-way for telly. It might be that I end up doing something like a recording like this for you now, just to sort of describe what it's like, what the atmosphere's like. And it might be that I provide photos and quotes for an online page. And it might be that BBC Network, telly, online and radio are interested as well. So it really is, I've agreed to do anything.
Is there like much kind of prep for just in case something happens, or is it just kind of, oh, something's happened, I'm just going to throw myself into this, essentially?
Yeah, so because I've offered to do all of these things, there's a couple of things that obviously I've agreed to, and so I've refreshed my riot training. I've had a look through. I'm quite up to date on the election, and I've been following it closely, and probably closer than I would have if I weren't going out there and if they hadn't have asked me to step in. So I've just so that I've got a bit more knowledge and I know a bit more about it, which is obviously a good thing. So yeah, I've refreshed my knowledge. I've followed it a bit closer. I've made sure all of my broadcasting apps are up to date on my phone, and I've made sure that I'll take my BBC lanyard and make sure I take the appropriate footwear just in case I'm running around Washington doing things.
So as we wrap up, voting has now concluded in 26 states and is nearing conclusion in a clutch more.
All eyes are on the counting now going on in the swing states of Georgia and Pennsylvania.
That's all for now. Join our colleagues Fran and Tom for next update at 2 a.m.